Well, first let me say, as someone who commuted to Baltimore for 15 years, I applaud the work that everyone in the room is trying to do, because it would have been very helpful if there were less people and less cars. But it's interesting because you're right that the audience is there to see you in some respect, but I think there's a couple differences. The first is sometimes I'm off in the opening act, and sometimes people don't even know you're going to be there. So if I open for a major headliner, so for example, this past Saturday I opened for Rob Schneider down in Annapolis, and they have no idea that I'm going to be there. They have no idea who I am. They're there to see Rob Schneider, and so they're having their mozzarella sticks, they're having their drinks, they're having a conversation, and the next thing you know, there's a guy on the stage that they've never heard of, and there's always this sort of there can be this feeling of, who's this guy? Like, well, this guy thinks he's funny. He's no Rob Schneider. Before we even say a word, I think sometimes the cards are stacked against the opening act, because if you were any good, they would have heard of you. There's a little mind trick sometimes that you have to encounter as a comedian. The other side is just sometimes, like I just said, sometimes they just don't know who you are. And unlike a Jerry Seinfeld who's going to walk out and is going to be funny the first 5 minutes, regardless of what he says, because he's Jerry Seinfeld and people are thrilled to see him, you do have to you still have to win over the crowd. To me, I think in my career, put that in quotes, I think the biggest change was my attitude and my approach, because I used to be very timid going onto the stage, and I used to often think that I did have to win them over, or what if they don't like me, or what if they don't think I'm funny, or and somewhere in there I just clicked my mindset, which is I know that I'm good, I know that I'm funny, I know that what I have to say is helpful or going to be well received by these people. It's been well received by audiences beforehand, and so there's just something that clicked in me at some point as a performer, where I went, no, I belong on this stage. And it's almost like, like an animal or some prey can smell the fear on you. So I think a lot of it has to do with attitude and confidence, that you are good at what you do, that you're not there to annoy anybody. You're there to bring them something good. In my case, humor, and in your case, a great service to make their lives and all of our lives better. So I think a lot of it has to do with confidence and attitude. I've learned that in comedy, and this is probably just in comedy, it's very hard to read an audience, because you just never know. You look at an audience and you might see a certain age group, or you might see a certain ethnicity, and you say to yourself, oh, they're just not going to like this. And I've done it on the stage in my head. I'm thinking about the next bit, and I've said to myself, don't do this. They're not going to laugh at that. And it turns out to be the best thing of the set. It's really hard to read people. I'm always a big believer that people like to do business with people that they like. And so humor has always been a big part. When I did, I did public relations for Visit Baltimore way back when, and I would work with travel writers. It's all about forming relationships. And so, using humor, whether it's, a lunch meeting or a phone call or that sort of thing, people, if you can make them laugh or like you said, it's all about forming that personal connection, that relationship with them. If you can make somebody laugh, it's a great first step in building that relationship and building that trust, because it sort of lowers the guard. And yeah, there are lines that I have on stage. There's certainly lines or stories that I hear in this. I run a retail business now, and I talk to the customers. And here's a situation where I, as the owner, know the least amount. It's a long story how I took over. This is my dad's store, music store, started 45 years ago, and I am not a music person. I'm surrounded by a great team of people that are very smart. But I'm the son that everyone wants to meet and talk to, and I know the least amount of the guitars and the instruments. So I diffuse that situation with humor, and I have go-to stories and go-to bits and go-to lines that I know work, and then people walk away going, "Wow, he's a nice guy, he's a great guy," and then they ask a detailed question. I turn them over to somebody else who knows what they're doing. But yeah, I think it's critical because I think, like you said, it's all about forming that connection. And I'm a big believer, like I said at the beginning, that people like to do business with who they like. The worst thing you could do to somebody, we just went through the sales training, is somebody walks in the door and says, "How can I help you?" Or "Can I help you?" Mm-hmm. And it seems, I mean, that's better than doing nothing. Mm-hmm. But it's such an easy answer to say no, just look into it, and that's it. You close the door. So it's not an open-ended conversation. You've said, "Can I help you?" They said no, or they said yes. I want this. You give them this, and they're done, and it's a transaction. It's a commodity, and there's no relationship formed at all. Versus bringing up something like as mundane as the weather, or if they're wearing a certain team's jersey, what kind of music do you like? Just getting into a conversation and letting them talk, and letting them give you the clues, because as soon as they say something about X, then hopefully, I always say, then you reach into your toolbox that you have an answer for X. If they bring up X as a problem, then you bring out Y, and you say, "Well, did you know that blah 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 blah?" Or they say, so that you've got something to help them, but you've tricked them into telling you what they want versus you trying to tell them what they want. Let them tell you what they need. So getting back to the comedy thing, so one of the things that headliners always told me growing up when I was this journey was I was very likable on stage, and that was one of the hardest things to learn. That you could get better in writing, you get better in delivery, but likable was a really strong trait. And so it goes back to the body language, and smiling and making eye contact and all that. I think that if you view your role out there as, again, you have something that's of value to them, you're not a threat to them, you're trying to help them. If you're positive and make eye contact, if you engage in non-threatening, non-door-shutting conversation and form some sort of rapport with these people, then the rest just becomes a normal conversation. I was working with a headliner, and in the green room, I was making him crack up, and he said to me, "I'm not saying that you're not funny out there, but you're even funnier in here." And he said, "Whatever this is, you need to figure out how to get that out there." And what he was saying was, like you said, I was just having a real conversation. I was just being who I was. I wasn't performing. And this was early on in my career. And so whatever that was, that natural sense of connecting with him and being funny, I had to figure out how to put that on stage and not be so forced.